everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. We have a great episode for you. With us, as always, is Hal Humphreys, the host. Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you today?
I'm doing fabulous. We have an awesome guest today. We have Dave Bunton, president of the Appraisal Foundation, joining us.
Thank you, Jim and Hal, for having me. I was on here previously, and I really enjoyed it. Look forward to it today.
Well, Dave, thank you for taking the time to be here. I know you're a busy man. For the folks in the room, like the one or two people in the country that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into the valuation space, and what exactly do you do?
Okay. I've been at the foundation as the CEO for 33 years. I was hired in May of 1990. Before that, I worked on Capitol Hill for 12 years. I was a legislative assistant in the U.S. Senate, and I was a chief of staff in the House of Representatives. I was hired because at that time, the foundation had just gotten its congressional authority, and they wanted someone who kind of knew the ropes on Capitol Hill. As far as what I do, I'm the CEO. I am the business manager of the foundation, supervise the staff. We have a staff of 14. Annual budget's about $4.2 million.
Okay. And the Appraisal Foundation is the congressionally authorized. How do you describe that?
Congressionally authorized source of appraisal standards and appraiser qualifications, but it is just for real estate. We set the standards for all appraisal disciplines, but Congress only recognized real estate because of the savings and loan crisis in the mid-1980s.
Okay, so when you look at that USPAP document, those last few that deal with business valuation and stuff like that, that does not fall under the purview of the Appraisal Foundation.
It's under the purview of the Appraisal Foundation. It's just not authorized by Congress.
I got you.
So we had written the whole book ahead of time before Congress authorized us, and they said we'll just authorize, in this case, the real property standards of USPAP. But we still update the ad valorem, personal property, and business valuation standards. Same thing goes for qualifications. Our real property qualifications are authorized by Congress. We also set qualifications for personal property. They're not authorized by Congress.
Okay, interesting. And, honestly, coming from the valuation world, focusing on real estate valuation myself and most appraisers, all we deal with USPAP is that first section, standards 1 and 2, by and large. When we go to the update class, our instructors always tell us, you've got this big, thick document, focus on the first, 2 sections for practicing appraisers. Obviously, if you're doing review work, you can deal with 3 and 4. And there's something new. This is a little bit off script, but there's something new with USPAP coming this next round. I know that you've done away with the idea of updating it on a regular basis. It is what it is, and it's going to kind of stay the same. And if it needs to change, it can. But instead of having this big, thick book that has standards, FAQs, advisory opinions, how is that going to be presented now?
You'll have a book of just the standards. It's about 65 pages, all 10 USPAP standards in it. And because it's matured over time, years ago, USPAP was changed quarterly every time the Standards Board met. Then it was annually. Then we went to every 2 years. And now we're going to let the marketplace decide. Will technology or marketplace changes or regulatory changes necessitate a change to the standards? But rather than doing it every 24 months just because it's 24 months, we're going to let those standards stay. But the guidance, we're going to try to update every 24 months in that separate resource manual. Issues, a big thing today is artificial intelligence. And if I use that in my appraisal report, do I need to put that in my certification or not? Well, that's a perfect example of guidance, timely guidance.
Right. Okay. Well, very good. Dave, again, thank you for being here. Let me take just a real quick second and give a shout out to one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
The Dictionary of Real Estate Appraisal, 7th edition, is a landmark text that reflects the depth and breadth of appraisal knowledge. Each entry, definition, and reference has been painstakingly researched and designed to reflect an expert understanding of issues that currently impact the profession. The new dictionary is an essential authoritative resource for all appraisers. The dictionary is divided into 2 sections, an alphabetical listing of terms directly related to real estate appraisal and an addendum with topical glossaries and compilations of terms used by related real estate professionals. Find it at appraisalinstitute.org/dictionary7.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hal Humphreys. I've got Dave Bunton from the Appraisal Foundation with me today. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. Dave, there's a lot of talk out there in the appraisal world about PAREA. What is PAREA? Just give us kind of the overall view of what PAREA is, because there's a lot of confusion out there.
And when it first came out, I said it sounds like something that you don't want to test positive for. It's practical applications of real estate appraisal. If you look what's going on in the world today, surgeons don't operate on cadavers. They do digital operations. Pilots use flight simulators. This is a little bit like that. This is kind of a flight simulator for appraisers. What happened, and many of your listeners know this, is that when banks started outsourcing their valuation work, that was the incubator for a lot of appraisers. And suddenly we lost that. And that hole could not be filled by the number of people that wanted to be a supervising appraiser. So we looked at the various things that were going on in other professions and came up with this simulated training. It's interesting. You could take a house, appraise it. Now put railroad tracks behind it, appraise it. How does that impact the value? Take the railroad tracks out, put a lake in there, add a garage, add a window, whatever. So you have a limitless set of valuation challenges. And we think that people that go through this will be better prepared than some people who use supervising appraisers. Depending on who your supervising appraiser is, maybe they just do subdivisions. So your experience is going to be very narrowly defined. So we think it's going to be great. I'll be very curious now. There is one on the street. The Appraisal Institutes just came out this month, and they're going to be tracked to see how they do on the state exam. To take the practical applications, you have to have all your education completed. Then this would be the experience component. You complete that, then you could sit for the state exam.
Interesting. So PAREA is basically, the way I understand it is, there's a huge barrier to entry, and there are a lot of barriers to entry into this business. I came about it in a unique way. My father was an appraiser. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people in the business, their father or their mother was a real estate appraiser, and that's how they got into the business. That model makes it really difficult for people outside the industry to come in. And there have always been concerns, objections to hiring trainees. I'm hiring my competition. I'm bringing in someone and teaching them what I do. On the mentor side, but on the trainee side, there's always been the concern of, how do I know that my mentor is doing it right? Mm-hmm. How do I know that I'm getting a broad education as a trainee? If my in your example, if my mentor only does subdivisions, how am I going to appraise a farm out in the middle of nowhere? I'll have no experience in that.
Yeah, the apprenticeship model could perpetuate bad practice, right? I mean, the people would just learn how that person did it, but it may not be the correct way. Right. That is a very, very valid concern. We're seeing a couple of interesting things, Hal. Number one, over the past 5 years, the first-time test takers for the national exam, it's gone from 1,500 a year to 2,500. That's a 1,000-person increase in 5 years. Wow. And they're 26 to 34 years old. If you look 10 years ago, a lot of them were the 40 to 45-year-old, second career, were involved in retail or sales, and then wanted to try this. So we're getting younger people and more people. And that's sort of a myth buster. People, nobody wants to be an appraiser anymore. Well, we went from 1,500 to 2,500 in 5 years. So the question, though, is that the replacement rate? How many people are retiring? If 2,000 are retiring, we're good. If 5,000 are retiring, it's not so good.
Well, and I think there's probably going to be a little bit of a shakeup in the industry once Fannie Mae institutes, with a hard stop, the new UAD. A lot of older appraisers are going to say, I'm not going to learn a new thing. I'm comfortable with the 1004. And that, here's the thing, was absolutely thrilled and shocked to see so many young people that are going through the ADI program and that are new to this business and trying to get in. And PAREA is giving them a sense of, I can actually do this.
Exactly. And, there's a lot of interest among corporations, among a lot of other organizations to provide scholarships, because the PREA on the street is $3,900 to $4,500, depending on whether or not you're an AI member. That's a fair amount of money. But a lot of major lenders and others are really interested in providing scholarships. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah,
but it's a great
right.
it's a great alternative. And there will be others. We've had 9 proposals sent to us. 3 have been publicly announced. If they don't publicly announce it, we don't share it with you. We've had 3 submit. The Appraisal Institute is currently out there on the street for licensed, and they hope to have the certified residential by the end of the year. McKissick should be out by the middle of next year. The 9, we call them proof of concepts, were submitted. We asked them to send us essentially their blueprint so they don't get too far down the road. This is a multi-million-dollar endeavor to produce all this simulated training. So we want to get involved with them, pretty early in the process.
All right, good. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, serving valuation professionals since 1978. We provide E&O insurance with a commitment to superior customer service, outstanding liability education, and unmatched claim defense, benefiting over 10,000 real estate professionals nationwide. Explore our exclusive Appraiser liability education by Peter Christensen and cost-effective seminars designed to foster your growth. Our underwriters, with an average of 26 years of experience each, are dedicated to supporting appraisers. Visit liability.com to discover how LIA can safeguard your business.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hal Humphreys. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. I've got Dave Bunton from the Appraisal Foundation with me today. Dave, we're talking about PAREA. Let me ask you this. There's a lot of confusion about PAREA out there. Do appraisers going through the PAREA process still need a sponsor or a mentor?
No. When you sign up with a provider, that provider has to give you a mentor. And that mentor serves 2 functions. The mentor is your help desk. You just don't get something, you're kind of at an impasse there. And number 2, there are milestones in PAREA. And that mentor will sit down with you virtually and essentially give you some quiz questions before you go to the next section. So he's the help desk, and then he's the periodic sort of tutor, if you will, a little bit.
And it seems to me that model, I was talking with a friend of mine over the weekend who did a year at university in Cambridge over in England. And the model there is you're assigned a topic, you've got an area of study, and then they assign you a tutor who works with you through the process. And you go through and you it's a self-study, a self-driven model of study. And I think that model is proven to work.
And it's go at your own pace, because people say, well, how long does PAREA take? Well, how long does a 7-hour online course take? I know people that can do it in 90 minutes, and I know people that do it in 10 hours. So, that PAREA is going to be the same way. Some people are very methodical and go through all of it, and other people are like, oh, this is the contest. How fast can I go through this? Which is why we have the milestones. So every now and then you got to pull over to the side of the road and have check those boxes before you can go forward.
Okay. Well, I'm curious to see how the states, I know there's some states that are still kind of trying to figure out what exactly practical applications in real estate appraisal means. And I think we're getting some clarity on that as we move forward. I'm really curious to see that first round of PAREA graduates come out and see how they perform.
Absolutely. There are 42 to 44 states now that essentially have bought into the PAREA model. There's a couple that might have to do some regulatory tweaks, but that's there. Those that haven't, the primary reason that I hear is they want to kick the tires. So if I'm the Appraisal Institute or any other PAREA provider, I would give a password access to those state regulators, let them walk through, see what the experience is. We have a lot of state regulators that have never taken an online course.
Yeah.
So simulated training is a bit of, it's a little hard for them to get their hands around it. So That's why that would be. But I think it'll work pretty well. We had some states initially, Pennsylvania, California, and Kansas, that didn't allow 100% experience requirement. Well, then you're kind of just kicking the can down the road, because if you can only get 50% of your requirement, which was what Kansas was, now you still need to find a supervising appraiser. Now you may be more marketable because you've got PAREA under your belt, but I'm pleased to tell you that Kansas in the last 10 days voted to change it to 100%. And Pennsylvania and California also have done that. So there's no state offering partial credit.
Okay.
And I think when we're in September of next year, all the states will approve this, particularly if the results come out the way I think as far as test performance.
Well, I think you're probably right about that. I think as the testing, I mean, look, here's the thing. When I got licensed back in 1992, certified general, the testing process was me studying all the material by myself and my mentor telling me, here's how this is done. And sometimes those didn't line up. I think the PAREA process is probably going to fine tune that for the folks going through it. Dave, anything else you would like to share about PAREA before we move on to our anonymous appraiser question that Jim has for us?
Not necessarily. Well, let me just point this out. If you're a profession, when you engage an appraiser, you have certain expectations. And if the training and experience are uniform, those expectations should be consistent. So I think that's what really PAREA is going to help.
Yeah, I like it. And here's the thing, you mentioned at the beginning at the top of the podcast, surgeons are practicing on digital means. Doctors are doing digital training.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best examples is we entrust, regularly 200 plus or minus people to a pilot flying a very large aircraft. And that pilot is going to flight safety and going through simulator training to get their type rating for that aircraft. So I think at the end of the day, this has legs, and I'm excited that the foundation has pushed this and working with the providers to give people a chance to get into this business that want to get into this business and up until now have not had a very clear route to get into the business.
And you can still use a supervising appraiser. This is just another alternative. And there are people that believe that I want to be a boots on the ground appraiser, like my father was or whatever. And I get that, Yeah. So, but I think particularly 3 to 5 years out, we'll look back and say this was a game changer.
Yeah, no doubt. Jim Morrison, do you have by chance an anonymous appraiser question for us?
We do. This week's anonymous appraiser question is kind of a combination of 3 or 4 emails that I got having to do with trainees. And we actually had one example where somebody was hired on, had a supervisor, and the supervisor had to let them go because they were so slow. So this is, with work so slow right now, I had trouble finding someone in my area that's willing to take on a trainee. What tips do you offer for a trainee to find the right mentor?
Okay. A few suggestions. One is some states keep a list of credential holders who are willing to be a supervising appraiser. There are a couple states, Mississippi and soon South Dakota, that offer what are called practicums, which is sort of a classroom style experience requirement, and you wouldn't need a supervising appraiser. The other one is, other two would be get involved with a professional society. Networking is a great way to find a supervisor. And also attend appraiser conferences. I know the conferences that you guys put together, you carve out an area for that very function, match up the trainee with a potential supervisor. So it's not a surprising, it's networking and circulating and let people see who you are, and your chances are going to be a lot better than if you stay in your basement.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, at the Appraisal Summit hosted by the NAA and us over here at Appraiser Learning earlier this month, there were a number of trainees in the audience, and we encouraged them to go talk to the appraisers in the audience, but we also strongly encouraged the appraisers to reach out to the trainees. And I promise you, during that 2-day, 3-day conference, there were 2 trainees that hooked up with a mentor that was ready to hire them the next week.
Wow.
And that's just 2 examples in one conference, but like I literally watched the engagement happen. and watched a trainee talking to a supervisor who said, "Hey, we're in the same area. Come see me next week. Let's see if we can work something out."
You got a little variation of Match.com working here, right?
Well,
right? I mean, it's perfect. I mean, and it works out for both of them. It works out for both parties. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned joining professional organizations. So, in the world of real estate appraisal, obviously the Appraisal Institute is a fantastic organization. They do really good education for their members. The National Association of Appraisers is a nationwide organization that provides absolute strong support for boots on the ground appraisers, overwhelmingly residential appraisers. If you're trying to get into this business and you want to do residential work, I would recommend looking at both the Institute and the National Association of Appraisers. But the NAA conferences and Val Expo, which is run by Appraisal Buzz and Appraiser Learning, both of those conferences are a really good place, or all three of those conferences are a really good place for trainees to meet appraisers. And even if you're going through PAREA, there is absolutely nothing that stops you from working with an appraiser in the process.
Absolutely, yeah. You know how I had an opportunity to attend and also speak at your ACTS conference in the spring, and it was a great program. In fact, when I got back to Washington, D.C., I was telling everybody, I mean, you hit all the right notes, and every presentation, there was a takeaway. It wasn't just someone up there and you think it's a good time to, go get a soda or something. There was a lot of meat, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, no doubt. And the good thing about the ACTS conference is it's a small conference. It travels around the country, so it's not just in Las Vegas. This upcoming year, it'll be in Colorado Springs. We move it around each year. So for appraisers that don't like to travel a long distance or take a full week off to go do a thing, the ACTS conference, when it's in your area, it's easy to get to. It's a smaller, more intimate group. And as Dave said, the program, I'm really proud of the program at the ACTS conference. And it's a really good chance to meet appraisers that are out there doing the thing. And for those of you out there looking to find a mentor, please be careful posting things on Facebook. I would recommend you go to a conference and not look for your mentor on Facebook, because Facebook can be a brutal place sometimes.
Yeah, social media in general. The interpersonal. There's nothing wrong. That's the way to go.
Yeah. So. Jim Morrison, do we have anything else we need to cover today?
Well, one thing that had just recently happened, Dave has announced his retirement, so we didn't get a chance to touch on that. So let's give him the floor for a little bit.
Yeah, what is that about, Dave?
It's all about moderation, and I've been doing this for 33 years. So my contract expires in December of 24, and I'll be 72. And I think it's a good time to move on. I don't think I'll totally get out of the valuation arena, but I think someone younger than I is probably in the best position. I think I probably got a lot of incentive from looking at our elected officials around the country today and said, let me get out while I still have my wits about me. So,
yeah, no doubt. Well, Dave Bunton, thank you so much for joining us. Jim Morrison, anything else we need to cover today?
That's it.
Okay. Well, in that case, for Jim Morrison and Dave Bunton, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.